Good morning, U.S. history students. I hope this finds everybody doing well. This morning we're going to be talking about the Civil War. Now, I'm not going off the book. I'm just going off a few of the facts of the Civil War. There's not a lot of time to get into everything that occurred. We only have 1 week. So I'm just kind of going to skim over some of the important issues that you would need to know. Now, the American Civil War was the bloodiest battle in the nation's history. Approximately 750,000 people died during the war. It touched almost every person, North and South. Um, the whole issue began with South Carolina claiming states' rights, and at the bottom, at the core of the issue was slavery. States wanted to be able to control whether they had slavery or not. The election of 1860 was a chaotic one. It was one where Abraham Lincoln was the Republican nominee, while Stephen Douglas was the Democratic nominee. In 1858, Abraham Lincoln said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other." The house divided that he's referring to is slavery. There was a huge division as to whether states wanted to be allowed to bring in slavery. The states wanted the rights to decide themselves, and when we go back and look at the Nebraska-Kansas Act, we can see how much violence occurred there with being able to decide whether they wanted to bring in slavery or not. So it was very a divisive issue. It was very confrontational. And there was a huge line drawn between slavery, pro-slavery, and anti-slavery. After Abraham Lincoln was elected in 1860, states were very upset, started to exclaim their rights to do what they wanted to. The first 3 states to leave the Union were South Carolina, and that started during the Battle of Fort Sumner. South Carolina seceded December 20th, 1860. Mississippi was next, seceding January 9th, 1861, and Florida was the third one, seceding January 10th, 1861. Now, Texas did secede on February 1st of 1861, and in February of 1861, representatives from the 6 states who had seceded met, and at that meeting they formed the Confederate States of America. And, the president of the Confederacy was elected February 4th, 1861, and that was Jefferson Davis. I'm going to go over a few of the plans and some of the battles now. Like I said, I'm just glossing over it. I'm not going to get into much detail, but I would encourage you to read up on it. So what was the Anaconda Plan? The Anaconda Plan was in 1861, and what it was a naval blockade of the South with the intention to strangle the Confederacy by cutting off their access to ports. That is how the navies usually work. If you can't get your supplies in there, you're not going to be able to win the war. The North, they then planned to surround the Confederacy, and they were going to squeeze them into submission and force them to become part of the Union again. Now, one of the battles, one of the first significant battles, and one of the significant for the United States Navy, was the Battle of Hampton Roads. And you also may hear it referred to as the Battle of the Monitor and the Merrimack. Now, the first battle, this was the first battle between ironclad ships. This was the first battle between, the big guns. It changed actually the way the Navy, it changed the course of the United States Navy. And this battle was fought March 8th through the 9th in 1862. Now we're going to shift over to some of the deadliest battles. In the Western Theater, one of the deadliest battles that took place was the Battle of Shiloh, and that occurred April 6th through the 7th in 1862. There was 23,500 casualties during that battle. Now, in July of 1862, this is right after the Battle of Shiloh, Congress passed effectively and immediately where slaves were emancipated if they came under Union control, and this was called the Second Confiscation Act. And what it did was it wanted to suppress the insurrection. It pushed treason and rebellion charges, and it allowed the Union to seize and confiscate the property of rebels for any and all purposes. Now, the bloodiest battle during one single day on American soil was the Battle of Antietam, and this battle went from September 16th through the 18th of 1862, and in one day there was over 20,000 killed. It was also the first major battle that occurred on Union soil. Now, another battle I want to talk about is the Battle of Chancellorsville, and it was a Confederate victory. They did win the victory, but it's still considered a great Confederate loss because Stonewall Jackson died during that battle, and that was Lee's right-hand man. And this battle occurred April 30th through May 6th of 1863. Vicksburg, Mississippi was the last holdout in the Theater of the West, and Vicksburg surrendered to Grant on July 4th, 1863. Now, that battle lasted from May 18th to July 4th in 1863. And Abraham Lincoln actually promoted Grant to General-in-Chief of the Union Army in early 1864 because he enjoyed Grant's success. The other general, Meade, was extremely cautious. He would do things that cost him some of the battles, and Grant was known for just unconditional surrender. Now, the final campaign of the northern incursion of Lee and the bloodiest battle of the war, with 51,000 casualties that occurred from July 1st through the 3rd of 1863, is the Battle of Gettysburg. The Atlanta campaign is going to be a series of battles in 1864 in the Western Theater of Georgia. And Sherman's success in Atlanta really hinged Lincoln's re-election campaign in 1864. His success was going to determine whether Lincoln won or not during the presidential election. April 9th, 1865, General Lee surrendered, and the Confederate resistance ended at Appomattox Courthouse. That is a quick, very top of the, just a little off the top of some of the things that occurred during the Civil War. At the point of succession, at the point of the Confederate states surrendering, the Union will form back together, and the next part of the century, the Reconstruction, will begin, and that's what we will be going over next week. I hope all of you have a great day. We'll see you later.